When you think 5 years out, how different do you think Twilio's product will look like because of AI? Tell me more. Tell me
Yeah,
everything.
I think we're going there. I think it's going to look massively different. Building AI that itself has a cost, but operationalizing AI and maintaining AI has its own unique cost that goes beyond the normal expectations of software engineering in general. At scale, something with a 99% efficacy, when you do that over a billion events, is wrong a lot of the time, right? And so you end up chasing that 10th, that 100th of a percentile.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the AI Speedrun. We're here with Zach, who leads AI and ML at Twilio. Welcome, Zach. Can you say hi and introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Danny, for having me. I'm Zach. I work at Twilio right now. I've worked at a bunch of places previously, but my whole career has been about AI, ML, and data, and how we can use that to help kind of a wide array of different customers and use cases.
Huge fan of Twilio. SendGrid powers a lot of our emailing. Thanks for building it.
I can't take credit, but the company certainly can.
So our first question is, can you rate on a scale 1 to 5, how challenging has it been to integrate AI into the Twilio product?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'd probably say about a 3, somewhere in there.
You can't pick 3.
I was confident I was told that I could select something between 1 and 5.
Between 1 and 5, but not 3.
But not 3. Okay, fair enough. If I can't do it, I'm gonna go closer on the two side, right?
Okay.
I think there's a lot of stuff going on. For a lot of companies, they have real challenges integrating AI. Not because they don't have clever, creative, innovative people, but because the nature of the work that they're doing may not lend itself well to AI integration. Fortunately, with Twilio, we've got a lot of use cases where AI is a massive boon to our customers. And it's one of the things that our customers request from us the most. They show up and say, hey, can we have something that makes something faster or more automated? Can we use AI to enhance the product in the following ways? And so we've got a massive benefit here, just simply due to the fact of the nature of the product that we have.
Where is there anywhere in the product where you're like, it was all the way on some side of the scale? Either it was like so easy to add AI or just like so freaking difficult.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thinking a little further back in my past, right? There was one particular product that I worked on in a past life, right? Where using AI for it would have been fantastic. Absolutely a great use case. We couldn't do it just simply because the legal challenge was too high. There was just challenges in the way that the user acceptance policy worked and what users believed would be happening. There was no way that we would have been able to do that. And that's in a past life for me. Similarly, right, I would say that you've got certain use cases where the use case is perfectly aligned, the problem is perfectly set, and you've got just the ability to, like, it's just so clear that that is the absolute right way to implement things. Anything inside of fraud or any of the adversarial domains like cybersecurity, clear, obvious use case where things get much, much easier.
Cool. Okay, next question. How would you rate the gap between what your customers expect of AI in your product and what's actually currently possible in 2025?
That's a good one. Again, starting to avoid 3. I learned my lesson last time. I would actually probably say that our question is maybe a little our answer here is a little closer to 4, and it will vary, right? Not just because of the fact that, hey, that gap can be wider. And this one, I'm interpreting that 5 means there's a pretty big gap, and 1 there's very little gap, right? But what I would say is that it's a little bit larger in some cases, because I think customers, one, you have the classic customer who looks at it and says, hey, this is magic, and therefore it can do anything. And then you have to help them understand what categories in which AI can actually be used in and when it's a viable solution to some of their challenges, right? But 2, you also have the statement of, hey, AI comes without cost. One of the things that I think a lot of customers will learn relatively quickly in starting to do their own AI journey is, hey, building AI that self has a cost, but operationalizing AI and maintaining AI has its own unique cost that goes beyond the normal expectations of software engineering in general.
Wait, tell me more. Like, why does it have a cost of maintaining beyond normal software engineering?
That's a great question, right? Many years ago, there was a paper published by Google titled "The High Interest Credit Card of Technical Debt," and it did this great breakdown. And this was a long time ago now. I think it was like 2014, 2016, that kind of time frame, right? And it was a great discussion about how Google had seen, hey, when we deploy AI, right, These are all the things that you don't think of at the beginning of a project that actually show up. And it's material like keeping that model up to date, monitoring whether or not that model has suddenly introduced an issue, rebuilding the model, not just to keep it up to date, but also to make sure that you're keeping in line with the way your domain begins to evolve over time. It was this wonderful breakdown and analysis that effectively said, hey, in the same way that software can develop, bit rot at the end of the day, if you don't maintain it, it starts to show its age and start to creak a little bit. All of that happens in AI. It just happens even faster.
So, like, what does that mean for your team?
So I think for teams, especially for teams where you have mixed groups of software engineers and AI experts, kind of like my team, for example, or if you work in an organization where you have two teams, the product team and then an AI team that are split up and they pass a model between each other, the biggest implication there is you want to keep a consistent model monitoring environment. You want to keep an eye on how that model is doing. If it's still doing just as well, if there are things you need to change or alter, if there are other concepts you need to introduce. But keeping an eye on how the model is performing is absolutely critical, because your model is just that. It's a representation of how the world worked when it was trained. And sometimes that world changes very slowly, and sometimes it changes really fast.
That's yes. So we actually do this. We thought, okay, should we build out a whole bunch of evals? And then we're like, wait, let's just do the simplest thing ever, which is every single week, just check what percentage of our AI responses do our customers accept,
Right.
and just make sure it doesn't go down.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing for this?
So you'll do it for all sorts of stuff, and that's always use case dependent, right? Hey, are you accepting the suggestions? That's a great one. Hey, are we reducing the overall cost of fraud or the implications of material like that? What's our overall NPS? Are we seeing increased adoption rates? It's always going to be different based on what your business case is and what your technical case is, right? And you're going to have two sets of those metrics there. The ones that make sense from a business perspective: how much money are we making? How many users are showing up? What is the differential in business terms from where we were yesterday? But also there are the technical ones too. How much does it cost on a per inference basis to run this model? How much does it cost to train or retrain? Are we correctly collecting more data so that way when we do a retraining event, it brings us up to current probabilities and not historical probability boundaries? There's a lot of material that goes into it, and it's going to be different every single time.
So let's say your team is building a new AI feature at Twilio. You can build all sorts of dashboards and evals and test cases, like all the different data that you might need. How, when you're just shipping an MVP, what does that quality measurement look like for you guys? Like, what are you guys doing?
So you start in a couple of places. Most places will start in a world where you're beginning to look at things like standard technical means of efficacy. What's your F1 score? What's your AUC right? Anything that says, hey, from a mathematical perspective, we believe that this model has developed a generalizable representation of how the world behaves. And then as you start to get more and more mature, hey, I'm comfortable with the technical metrics that measure model efficacy, then you begin to ask yourself, hey, does this actually work in real time? The worst case scenarios, and you hear horror stories like this every once in a while. There was a really famous one with what was called the Netflix prize, probably about 8 years ago or more, right? Was a statement where a team built a technically perfect model. It was great. It performed better than the movie and show recommendation algorithm that Netflix had at the time. There was $1 million prize attached to it, if I remember correctly. And they built a model, external team built a model that was better than what Netflix had and was running. It cost too much to run. It was way too complicated to be able to run in anything that looked like an efficient timeline or with efficient computational resources. And so Netflix didn't use it. And that's a great example of why you need to use both technical and business metrics. Because if you only use one or the other, you can often lead yourself down the wrong path. You might start in one place, usually the technical one, but you can never launch that model without having done some amount of evaluation in the real world where you're monitoring how that model affects the business metrics that you care about.
I love it. It brings us back to this question where, like, what makes it challenging to integrate AI into products. So for us, probably I would put like our experience at Jam a little bit higher. Yeah, about the same place on the scale. And actually, the thing that's been difficult is not the technical side, it's the business and product and UX side. And actually, what's funny is our applied AI engineering team, if they had to do like a retro now on like the last feature we built, they'd be like, we just did like infinity design iterations. Like we didn't get to do like we all our iterations were about design, not AI.
That's almost always the way it goes, right? The hardest part of it actually isn't the technology. And you could say that this is a good analogy for all, like a good representation of all of computer science in general, right? Outside of academia, which is like, hey, the hardest problem isn't usually the technical part. It's finding your product market fit, making sure you've done something that affects your standing in that marketplace in a positive way, ideally, right? And making sure that the thing that you have done is maintainable and reliable going on into the future.
Yes. Yes, 100%. So, how, 1 to 5, not difficult at all, extremely difficult. How difficult has it been for the AI features that your team has developed to meet the Twilio quality bar?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm going to put it just over 3. Twilio's quality bar is pretty high, right? We have an interesting set of problems because so many of our customers ride on our communication rails, right? And are depending on us for an increasingly large array of different capabilities, right? Our bar is quite high to make sure that we're able to deploy things that work at scale, right? At scale, something with a 99% efficacy, when you do that over a billion events, is wrong a lot of the time, right? And so you end up chasing that 10th, that 100th of a percentile just to get closer and closer to what you can do in terms of both the capabilities of the technology and the expectations of your customers, right? That scalability metric is a challenge all on its own.
One more. When you think 5 years out, how different do you think Twilio's product will look like because of AI? Tell me more. Tell me
Yeah,
everything.
I think we're going there. I think it's going to look massively different, right? It's because of the fact that as customers leverage the capabilities that Twilio has, they're looking to it more and more to make their lives easier. They're looking to it to do more things for them so they don't need to consider all of those capabilities, right? So there's a product that we launched a couple months ago, which is the compliance toolkit for messaging, effectively making sure that customers who come to us because they want to send mobile SMS, MMS, RCS style messages, right, to their end consumers, they want to make sure that they're compliant. Here's the problem. We have international customers. We have international customers who have international end users. We have this incredibly wide and diverse array of what compliance looks like. And the question ultimately becomes, do we take on that challenge and make that easier for the customer, taking a look at, hey, the customer wants to send a message at this time to this location. Hey, are there any necessary compliance things that we need to think about? Or do we think that that's a responsibility of the customer? And Twilio, because of AI, has been able to take the position that we can make it easier for the customer to remain compliant with the laws that affect themselves and affect their end users. A really great example of this is a communications law that exists in the EU, which effectively states, hey, after a certain time of the day, we're in quiet hours. No more marketing messages, no more advertisements. The citizens of this country want to be able to go home and enjoy have quiet enjoyment of their lives and their families, right? And how many times, have we woken up at some point with some kind of message saying, hey, here's an offer for some advertising thing, right? That particular country has come to the conclusion they don't want to deal with that anymore. And so they've created a law that says there are punitive damages that can be applied if you are a company who sends a marketing message after a certain hour. One of the things that Twilio has been able to do is make it easy for companies who may not even recognize they're about to send a message to a customer who is in a country with that compliance requirement, make it easy for them to say, whoa, we were about to do something we shouldn't have done. Not a problem. We're not going to do it. Everyone else gets their message. And we just stall there's a bunch of ways that you can solve this. But for example, someone who's in such a country, we just say, great, we'll schedule that message to be sent at 9 a.m. in the morning when quiet hours are over. Something along those lines.
I can imagine also, I mean, I think of Twilio as like the communication layer between machines and humans. And I can imagine that right now humans are setting up all the rules and how messages will be sent. but the way that machines will communicate with humans will become a lot more autonomous and flexible. And I can imagine who uses Twilio will also change.
Well, I think that's probably right. And I think there's another aspect of this too, right? As more and more stuff becomes transparent to the end user, it just works and it works the way you expect it to. Twilio becomes less of an organization that is communicating between machines and humans, but it's communication between humans and humans. It's allowing us to make sure that users can just simply say, "Hey, this is the intent that I want to be able to communicate to my end users." Make sure that it gets there, and in the event that those end users want to communicate back to me, make sure that I'm capable of handling that. It gives it a much more human experience overall, as opposed to making the end user feel like they're communicating with a machine.
I love it. In startup world, there was a time where we knew all of our customers, and then now we're many years after that. We don't, but we still wish that we had that type of relationship or be able to talk to them in that way. And so for me, as like a Twilio customer, that makes a lot of sense. Like I think about what's the experience we want people to have, and we never want to have an experience that's spammy. We actually want one that's helpful. And right now, there is no sort of such flexible tooling that would allow us to do that with business communication. But I can imagine us having an intent and saying, we want to help users complete these types of tasks, and like here's the type of communication we want to send them when it's appropriate, and letting Twilio just do that.
That's right. Like the goal here is effectively to make sure that the right human gets the right message at the right time.
Awesome. I'm in. Okay, one last question for you, Zach, which is, do you have any favorite AI tools, uses, newsletters, podcasts, things you recommend others check out?
Okay, you've tricked me because I've been attuned in this conversation to rating things on a 1 through 5, and I don't have numbers to guide me here. So that was mean of you, and I'm going to hold it against you going forward.
It's fair. It's fair.
That being said, Danny, yeah, there's a lot of material that's really great out there right now, and I think one of the things that's wonderful is just how fast the industry is moving. You find new voices every day that bring different perspectives and target different audiences for what they're looking for. Right? There's a whole raft of major academic conferences that I think everyone's really excited about. I think that there's a lot of material that's coming out from the podcasting space. Many years ago, I did Twimmel, and I think like Sam is still doing Twimmel out there right now, and I think he's just going to keep going forever because he's got infinite energy. There's a lot of material that I think is really exciting. The thing that I like most about it, right, is the fact that it has entered into the cultural zeitgeist in a way that means that material like this is becoming more and more of a common household activity. And that's great because it makes it really accessible. I know that we in the industry often bemoan the fact that things like AI have become so accessible because you start seeing things like, oh gosh, Skynet's going to happen. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way at all, but okay. But one of the things that I think is really great is that you start to see more and more stuff like this. I think that there's like a pretty wide array of capabilities that changes week to week in what starts to surface and where it ultimately goes, right? I mean, I've been trolling Archive for years and years. Google Scholar is useful, even if it's usually a little slower after things have actually gotten fully published. You've got a wide array of podcasts that change all the time. You've got a whole host of industry conferences as well as academic ones. I mean, there's no shortage of material out there. When we talk about things for uses, however, I'm loving it more and more for being able to do code assist as I develop out some of my own work and work here at Twilio. It's
What are
something
you
that
using?
right now.
Yeah.
I can tell you what I'm using personally. I don't get to talk for Twilio on this because then I get calls from my lawyers about, hey, you shouldn't have said that. But on a personal level, I've got Copilot and Cursor going right now.
Both.
Yeah, both. They're good at different things. They're good at different things, and they fit into slightly different use cases as well, if that makes sense.
What do you use Cursor for versus Copilot?
So I like Copilot's ability to do effectively line complete. So it feels like more of a pair programming experience while I'm actually articulating material. I've enjoyed using Copilot from the purposes of saying, hey, I'm going to describe some effective end state, get me started, right? I these days I write the majority of my code in Rust. I'm not doing a lot of Python anymore except for a handful of projects. And so I've found that some models are much more effective at Rust, some are not. And so using them in a pairing environment allows you to take advantage of some of the differences.
That's so cool. Zach, thank you so much for joining. Where can people find you online, follow your learnings, work?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You'll find me on the Twilio blog from time to time. I used to have a Twitter account, don't have a Twitter account anymore. It just became too much trouble to turn on and maintain. But LinkedIn is probably the best place right now.
Awesome. Zach, thank you.
Fantastic. Danny, thank you for having me.